Good evening, everybody. Well, we want to welcome you to our 5th annual From Sickness to Health program. My name is Mark Witzel, and I will be your host here for the next 5 meetings. And we are so glad that Rico Hill is back with us. For those of you who don't know, Rico was a former television producer, and he left the business of Hollywood producing TV shows, and now he's into producing healthy people. So that's why we invite him here to put on this seminar. Just a little information for those of you who are attending here in person. We do have restrooms that'll be down this hall. And when you get down the hall, there'll be a hall on your right. The bathrooms will be there. We do have 4 air filtration systems in here to filter the air as we're here tonight. I see everybody is wearing their mask, so we just continue to make sure you keep your mask on during our program and stay your social distance 6 feet from each other. We have every other row taped off to help with that. So at this time, we just want to welcome you. I included in your packet, you should have a page that says Seminar Notes with the title of tonight's topic. So you can take notes because you will want to keep this information and reread it and review it because this is some awesome information, and we are so happy to have Rico. Rico, come on up.
Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening. So good to see you all here. This is really exciting. It is an honor and a privilege to be back here in the Pacific Northwest amongst my friends, and as I understand it, because of the conditions and the situation that we're in, I have even more friends who are watching online, streaming as we are live. You should know that, those of you who are here. And I want to just let you all know who are at home watching this. Hopefully you're watching this and not the vice president debate, but watching this program, I want you to know that every single precaution that there could be is being taken to make sure that those who are here in the audience with us are safe. As Mark mentioned, there are air filters. I see them. They're the most high-tech thing I've seen. I don't think they even had such things on the plane when I came here just yesterday, but they're here. There's plenty of space for everyone. There's even more space for those of you who might be watching online and you wondered, should I go down there? Well, I want you to know you're welcome to come. Everything has been done. I feel safe, and I promise you that I won't get too close to you. How about that? Well, for those of you who are right here in the audience, thank you so much for being with us. We have some very important things to share with you. Now, I've been coming here, as Mark mentioned, for like the last 5 years. And every time it's just a wonderful adventure, and it's good to see old friends and to meet new friends. But this is a different year, isn't it? This is a very different year. And it makes the things that I'm sharing and have been sharing even more critical, more appropriate. Now, some have probably in previous years may have said, well, you know, maybe not now, but at some point I will adopt some of these principles that he talks about. Some of you may have said, well, you know, not this year, but next year. I don't think we can do that anymore. I think it's time that we really, really listen, and listen good, and begin to make some decisions. What do you think? As Mark mentioned, he said I used to produce television, but somehow I keep getting pulled back into it. But I'm producing television again, and I'm happy to be doing so. I love the kind of things that I'm producing, including health programs. I have a television show called From Sickness to Health, which this seminar is named after, From Sickness to Health, where we desire to take people from a life of sickness to a life of health. Don't you want to feel better? Don't you want to feel secure no matter what happens around you or any type of a pandemic? Don't you want to just wake up without the aches and pains? Don't you want to put away some of those medications? By the way, I haven't told anybody to put away medications. But wouldn't it be nice to adopt a lifestyle that actually allows you to be pain-free and drug-free? Well, that's our aim. That's our aim over these 5 days, starting tonight, where we will be presenting 10 habits or 10 lifestyle habits of the longest living Americans. Lifestyle habits, there are 10 of them, of the longest living Americans. That's what we'll be covering tonight. Tomorrow, you don't want to miss any of these, by the way. Tomorrow, we're going to be looking at the #1 killer disease in America. Do you know what it is? Anyone know what that is? It's heart disease. And we're going to have a presentation called When Hearts Attack. When hearts attack, because many people believe that when they have a heart attack, that their heart has somehow attacked them. So we're going to cover that, and we're going to look at all of these presentations in light of the COVID-19 coronavirus. That's why what we're sharing is so critical now. On Friday, we're going to look at what role rest plays. What role does sleep? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you sleeping well? I see heads shaking. Maybe those of you who are watching as we stream, maybe you're shaking your head too. We're going to look at a presentation called Where is the Rest of My Sleep? Where is the rest of my sleep? And then on Saturday, we're going to have a presentation, and we're going to look at what's going on down in this area, in the gut. We're going to look at a presentation. You're going to hear a presentation called The Constitution of Constipation. I love that title. It always gets a little snicker. The Constitution of Constipation. Because most people don't know what constitutes constipation. So we're going to look at that together and even beyond that, and see what is all the new science dealing with the gut, because you want to have a strong immune system now. You would agree with me on that, wouldn't you? You want to have a strong immune system, and so much of our immune function starts right here. So we're going to look at that. And then we'll top it all off on Sunday. Yes, 5 days. On Sunday, at a different time though, we're going to look at nutrition. We're going to do an exhaustive trip through nutrition and see in a presentation called Read Between the Labels. And we're going to look and see what things we could be doing nutritionally right now as we are dealing with COVID-19 coronavirus. Does that make sense? So let me tell you what you're in for tonight. So basically, I'm going to walk you through some lifestyle information. We're going to go do sort of a historical blast back to the past, as it were. And we're going to look at some of the lifestyles of some of the ancients. Bring that forward and see what were the issues. What were the issues there? And then we'll look at disease. What is disease? Kind of define that for us. And then we'll look at what a group or groups of people who are around the world who are doing something so different that they're living longer than the rest of the general population. And then we'll just finish it all off with some things, some tips for you to do. We're going to look at some of the science that's come out right now. I'm talking about fresh science as we look at what these lifestyle issues are, along with the best lifestyle for you. So does that make sense to everybody? All right, well, let's get started. Technology is amazing when it works. Now, this clicker is going to work for me, right? Oh, it has to be on, which it is. If someone could just advance my slide. Thank you, Edgar. You see here we have a huge setup here. It's quite the production, but I'm not sure why it's not clicking. There you go. All right. If you could advance the slides, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. There we go. All right, so I have a show called From Sickness to Health. From Sickness to Health is a show that I did on a Christian broadcast channel called 3ABN, and I appeared with a blue guy. And this blue guy, as you see him here, basically he is the epitome, or he personifies sickness. He's that voice in your head who's always sort of encouraging you to go ahead and don't just eat a slice of pizza, but eat the whole pizza, right? He's that voice in your head. He's that thing that sort of nudges you forward to be unhealthy, or nudges you to not get up off of the couch. So I represent health, he represents sickness. Now, so lifestyle habits of the longest living Americans. Let's go through this. Now, let's explain what we mean by lifestyle. Lifestyle. What is lifestyle? Lifestyle is the things that you do as a habit. Things that you do, you have a pattern of doing these things. And sometimes we don't have within that pattern or those habits things that are best for us. Sometimes it are things that are not good for us at all. Now you see my banners behind me, and the first thing you see up there is trust more, stress less. That is a principle. We want to have low stress levels, and you'll see as I go through the presentation why it's so very important. You see next there that we want to have refreshing rest. We want to enjoy sunshine. We want to actually enjoy good, nutritious food. We want to exercise. Did you know that these are all principles or things that comprehend or make up your lifestyle? And the problem here in our country is that we don't understand these principles and oftentimes ignore them, often to our own detriment. Now, you all remember this guy. This guy, anybody remember him? Robin Leach, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Anybody remember that show? Well, Robin Leach, he had a show, it was back in 1984, ran to 1985, and it was all about the lifestyles of the rich and famous. I mean, it was champagne and caviar. It was the filet mignon just at anyone's disposal. We got a chance to peer into the lavish lifestyles of those who were rich, and the foods that they ate and the way that they indulged themselves. And I tell you, it was something that we would covet, right? Oh, if I could only live like that. They had lifestyles that anyone would want to experience. But here's the thing. While they loved their lifestyles, there was a problem. In fact, for Robin Leach, he had high blood pressure. Robin Leach eventually died at the age of 77, 5 days before his 77th birthday. He had high blood pressure, but he had complications from high blood pressure long before his death. So you could say that his last years were not the best years. What about those in ancient Rome? Ancient Rome, there was an empire, lots of wealth, lots of luxury. The number one thing, aside from war and conquering, that Romans were known for, they were gluttonous. They indulged themselves, they gorged themselves. And as history has looked over the lifestyles of ancient Rome, they saw that they had many diseases. Now, there were plagues and things like that, of course. But one of the things that they noticed that they had major digestive problems. Digestive problems. Now, anyone know the lifespan of a citizen of ancient Rome at the time? 25 years. 25 years. Now, that's counting infant mortality. You understand? So the infants that were dying because of all manner of things, it brought down the age range or the lifespan significantly. But if you take that out of the equation, Still, they only lived on average 50 years. Something's wrong with a lifestyle that only allows you to live for 50 years. I'm 55. I can't imagine having died 5 years ago. And I'm looking out here, I see some of you might be a little older than me. So can you imagine? So something's wrong with the lifestyle, even though they had luxuries. And much of the death was among those who had everything. Yeah? What about another prominent ancient civilization, advanced society, as it were? What about the Egyptians? I said, what about the Egyptians? Yeah, what about the Egyptians? The Egyptians, now they had advanced civilizations as well. They were doing everything that we still marvel at, don't we? They had advanced technology. They had arts and science. They had some of the best education systems and best libraries in the world. They had architecture that we still wonder how they did it. They built the pyramids, right? Average lifespan of an Egyptian, 40 years. Something's wrong with the lifestyle. That's why we're talking about this right up front. The first thing we want to talk about is the lifestyle. Let's go further into these Egyptians because it makes sense to really look at their lives. Why? Because the Egyptians, with all this advanced civilization, the Egyptians were able to preserve bodies so well that when people have gone back, and I'm talking 4,000 years, you know, the way that they preserved the bodies was so intact that they would exhume these bodies from the graves, from the tombs, and they would examine them, and they would determine what types of diseases that they had, because they would have arteries and veins and things like that that were so intact still, you can clearly, scientifically look at what was the disease that they had. Well, guess what? Number one thing that killed Egyptians? Heart disease. Heart disease was number one. What's the number one killer today? Heart disease. So if we want to know, there's a quotation I like to say often. It says, you know, of all the things that we could study, history is best qualified to reward all research. So to be able to go back in history and look, it informs us. Those who will, you know the saying, repeat the past are bound to repeat it and fail in the future. They also had diabetes, they could tell. They also had cancer. They also had arthritis and osteoporosis, they had gout, all these types of diseases. Why did they have these diseases? Oh, tomorrow. I'm going to be presenting When Hearts Attack, and we're going to go deeper into this idea of why did they have all of these diseases, namely and especially heart disease. So I mentioned they had arthritis, but let's go further. So listen very carefully. I want to make this point. I don't want anyone to miss it. Don't anyone miss this point. While all of these people, modern day, lifestyle of the rich and famous, ancient Rome, lifestyles of the rich and famous and powerful. Egypt, same thing. Famous, powerful, advanced. They had lifestyles that they loved. Don't miss this point. They had lifestyles which they loved. But their lifestyles didn't love them. Did everybody catch that? Did everybody catch that? Listen, friends, as we think about COVID-19 and the time that we're living in, we need to really examine if the things we love us. And what do I mean by that? If it loves you, it won't hurt you. If it loves you, it won't cause you pain. If it loves you, it won't cause you sickness and death. But we love the things that don't love us. Maybe there might need to be a paradigm shift in loving the things that love us. In fact, the things that love us before we love them. Because science can even show us the things that already are better for us, that will grant us health, that will cause us to have more energy, that will give us better sleep, that will help us to avoid and prevent a pandemic such as the one we're having right now. And these are the principles that you see behind me on my banners. It spells out the new life. And I don't know anybody who doesn't want a better life or the life that is free from sickness and pain and the fear of will I come down with this deadly virus. 200 and some thousand people already dead in this country, 7 million cases, 7 million plus. And they say there probably will be a second wave. Oh, we are talking about these things at the right time, aren't we? I'm so glad you're tuning in. In fact, I would say even come a little closer. Tomorrow, we'll be here same time. Come, there's plenty of room. Come in, pens and paper, and take the notes, as Mark said. Write down the things that will benefit you. Not only you, but your friends, your family, your neighbor. As we move on here, all the research shows that the U.S., in this country, in the United States of America, we spend twice the amount on health care than other countries. Wait for it, with worse results. We spend more money, but we don't really get the results that other countries who spend a lot less. The U.S. spends about twice what other high-income nations do on health care, but the lowest life expectancy and the highest infant mortality rates, this study suggests. Goes on to say in 2016, the U.S. spent 17.8% of its gross domestic product on health care, $1,400 and some per person, compared to the average with other countries of $749. That's twice as much per person, especially on drug medication. And I'm going to show you this in a moment, but we're finding, listen. We're finding that those who have high blood pressure, there is a correlation to being on certain drugs and making you more susceptible to the coronavirus. That's why we come and we do this every year, because this particular group of people, this organization, is concerned about what's happening to the health in our communities. We're concerned about you out there, and they put this elaborate production on, not because they don't have anything else to do, but because we're seeing that things are not getting better. Have you considered just 5 years ago, are we better off? Are things better off? The question we must ask ourselves, have we made necessary changes? And the answer would be no. Oh, there's so much more that I can say about that, but let's keep pressing on. Let's keep pressing on. So, as I mentioned, we end up here in the United States almost at the bottom of the list. It's horrible to see where we are, such an advanced, industrialized, intelligent nation of people, and yet we can't do better than France, we can't do better than Norway, New Zealand, the Netherlands, Germany, Australia. Our overall ranking is way down there. Now, it's an easy question to answer. Who does better? Who lives longer? Men or women? Men or women? This side. Women. Oh, look at the women. You all take such joy in saying that. Well, let's find out why. Why do women live longer? And we want to see, though, why women live longer than men. Do I have audio here? This is such an amazing setup. I must have audio. Here's a little video. You don't mind if I show you a few videos, do you? I think even those of you who are streaming, you'll get to see exactly what we see here. But I tell you, it's better live. When it works, it's better live.
A new report on America.
All right. Here we go. You just advance that slide one more time. It's a great video. You know, what I like about the first night is that this is the night where you get all the kinks out and the bugs out and all the things that you knew would work. And by the way, all the things that worked when we actually went through it before you got here. All right, we'll keep pressing on because I got more things to say beyond that. Now, there is a ranking that they did around the world, a ranking that they did with men and women. And sure enough, women live longer than men. No surprise, right? But this is going to surprise you. This will surprise you. Look at how women did or how they fared with other nations around the world. Women, number 15, way after United Kingdom, Portugal, the Netherlands, Germany, living an average of 80.7 years. That's good. That's good. I mean, who wouldn't not want to live 80.7 years? However, 80.7 years is usually been on a decline, or those 80.7 years were on decline some 20 years earlier. Oh, yeah. That's how it kind of works. You kind of, what happens is you live life free and fun and do what you want in your 20s. And you start to feel the effects of it in your 30s. And then you get diagnosed with it in your 40s. And somewhere towards your 50s, you start taking a medication for it. And more in your 60s. And before you know it, you are on that downward spiral. And you're in a wheelchair. You're on a lot of medication. And you're not dead, but sometimes you wish you were. Right? I've heard people say it. They say, you know what? I don't want to live long if I'm going to be living like that. I'm going to have no quality of life. I'd rather die young. But what I'm sharing with you tonight, and what we're sharing over the next 5 days is how you can actually live beyond 80, beyond 90, even beyond 100, and have a lifestyle that's similar to people I'm going to introduce you to this evening. Now, what about men? What about men? How do they fare? What are the rankings, the life expectancy ratings for men? Well, men came in 17, or the United States men in the United States came in 75.64 years, again, but started declining somewhere in the 50s, right? Somewhere in the 50s. But that's well behind all these other industrialized nations who spend less money, but yet do better than we do. Now, in that video that I was going to show you, what you would have seen, tongue-in-cheek, is that a lot of men just do really boneheaded things, like jumping off of the roof of a roof with a bicycle, or doing things that are really, really dangerous to their health. And basically, we see sometimes our death is based on our own, it's self-inflicted, as they say, right? So let's look at the 5 healthy habits to live by. There are 5, how many? 5 healthy habits that you should live by. 5 healthy habits that you should live by. And let's take a look at them. This was in a Harvard University, the Harvard Gazette carried this study, and it showed the 5 healthy habits. And the people that I'm going to introduce you to, they followed these 5 habits. Even though I have 10 principles behind me, it's distilled down into these 5, right? If you do just these 5, according to the science, you will have a longer, healthier, better quality of life. It said that these Harvard researchers issued the first comprehensive analysis of the impact that adopting low-risk lifestyle factors has on life expectancy in the United States. What are these? It said further, here it is, 1 through 5. healthy eating is number one. The thing that we neglect most is the thing that every single scientific study, I'm going to show you even as it relates to COVID-19, that the number one thing that you can do, aside from just being precautionary and wearing a mask and social distancing and washing your hands, the hygiene and all that, is eating a healthy diet. We want to break down as we go through what does that really mean, because everybody's got an opinion about what it could be. But number one is healthy eating. Number one is healthy eating. Number two is exercise. You need to move. I love this one quotation I read somewhere, and it just really stuck with me. And that is this: in order to have good health, we must have good blood and perfect circulation. Now, that is so basic and fundamental and elementary when you think about it. You know, when you exercise, you have good circulation. What's in that blood? How do you get good blood? How do you have healthy blood? Well, whatever you eat is converted to blood. So you can see that eating healthy produces good blood, and then you need for that blood to circulate through your body at the rate and in the way that the body was intended to do it, according to your physiology and your anatomy, right? So healthy eating, exercise. Number three, maintain ideal weight. Oh, I have so much to say about that in relationship to COVID-19. Stay with me. Stay with me. Avoid alcohol. Now, avoid smoking is number five, and many people have begun to cut back on cigarettes. There's a lot of information out there. People are learning. But, you know, things just kind of shift and they change, don't they? Now, vaping is the thing, you know, and still doing something that's unusual. Right now, in my lifestyle coaching and working with people, I'm working with someone who has lung cancer right now and been smoking since she was 14, 39 years of age now. And now she's starting to consider, what is my lifestyle? Drinking and smoking. And she's done it to the extent that she cannot stop. She's addicted. You understand? And this is the case for many. Maybe you out there watching live streaming, you may have that same issue, addicted to something that you've been doing for many, many years. And now you're wondering, does this put me at risk? Am I in jeopardy? Oh, you want to come, or you want to keep watching. We have encouragement and encouraging news for you. So, 5 things that healthy people do. If we do these things, we will do better, right? All right, let's keep going here. Got a few more things to share with you. Now, this is the dictionary definition of disease. It talks about a disorder I like this idea of disease is dis-ease, right? That says it all. But a disordered or incorrectly functioning organ, part, or structure or system in the body, to the extent that you have symptoms and then you have some sort of an ailment or disease, right? But there is an inspired definition that I really like a lot better. It's this one. Sickness and disease, watch this. Sickness and disease are an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. And I know what you're saying. You're saying, I didn't even know there were laws of health. Well, let's break it down a little further. Principles of health. In other words, these are things that you must do. They are the price of admission. They are not negotiable. They are the things that you and I must do no matter whether we like it or not. It's like gravity. You can't say, well, you know, I never did like gravity, so therefore I'm really not going to pay attention to it. And you go up on top of the roof and you jump off and say, here, take this, gravity. Well, gravity will pull you down and say, no, you take it. It's like that. It's that serious. In other words, laws of health are things like, and they just happen to be lifestyle principles that I'm talking about. Drinking water, it's a law. And they find now that when you don't drink water, your body stresses out. It becomes, the dehydration causes the body to produce more cortisol in stressing the body. And when the body is stressed out, it lowers your immune system. And guess what? We cannot afford to have our immune systems compromised when we have a deadly virus that we're all trying to avoid. So water is necessary. Water also helps with helping your lungs to clear away a lot of the congestion that will be there otherwise. So if you can keep your lungs clean, that's what the water does. Keeps your lungs nice and clean and clear. So drinking water is the law. Whether you've got a pandemic or not, you need to drink water, and plenty of it. We'll talk about that as we go through this week, these 5 days. Eating the right food is necessary. It's a law. Exercise is a law. The human body is the only machinery that wears out when you don't use it. You have to exercise, right? So sickness only comes when there's a violation of these principles that we're talking about. But here's the thing, the people who have died young didn't follow the principles. The people who have lived a long life and are still living a long life, even are secure in a time when we are dealing with a pandemic, are people who follow the principles. I want you to meet these people. Let's keep going. Here's some information on COVID-19 coronavirus. These things blew me away. Are you seeing what I'm seeing or not seeing what I'm seeing? Next slide. There we go. Now, this was in the International Journal of Infectious Diseases, very recent, 2020, and looked at 2019 patients who had a prevalence of comorbidities. Comorbidities, you know what that is? You hear the word morbid in there, right? It's pre-existing conditions. You had something already, like high blood pressure. That's a lifestyle disease. Cardiovascular disease, that's a lifestyle issue, right? Asthma, diabetes, these are preconditions, these are comorbidity. In other words, when you have that already and then you get exposed to coronavirus, you are much more likely to end up in the ICU on a ventilator. Make sense? So here, they looked at the prevalence of comorbidities and its effects in coronavirus disease 2019 patients. This was a systematic review and meta-analysis. Notice this. Let's just look at diabetes. Diabetes in COVID-19. Prevalence, pathophysiology, prognosis, and practical considerations. Now, diabetes is clearly a metabolic dysfunction. It's an issue with how you're metabolizing. It is insulin resistance at its core, the basic definition of diabetes. But they're finding, of course, if you happen to be a diabetic in an era of coronavirus, then you are much more likely. In fact, they found that those who had high blood pressure were twice as likely to be affected by coronavirus if they had high blood pressure. 3 times as likely if you had heart disease. If you had them at the same time, which could be the case, high blood pressure and heart disease at the same time, 4 times as likely to actually be affected by COVID-19. And diabetes, no different. High up there in terms of this comorbidity, in terms of how you would be affected by COVID-19. Let me show you a few bits from this study. They looked at this thing. Watch this. Watch how it comes down to the basic principles that I'm talking about. It says a diagnosis of diabetes has been a key indicator of the severity of COVID-19. And in this regard, the virus has relentlessly highlighted our global Achilles heel of metabolic dysfunction and points to a prime opportunity, listen, to fight back. That fight, however, is not going to be won with Clorox or with Purell or masks, wear them though, or medication. The fight will only be won through a serious commitment to improving everyone's foundational metabolic health, starting with the lowest hanging evidence-based fruit, Guess what that is? Dietary and lifestyle interventions. This is what the science is showing. If you really want to fight this thing, let me just break that down into just layman's terms. If you really want to fight, it's not with all the things that we are wiping our hands with and swabbing with and all those things and putting on a mask. The thing that the wise man or wise woman will do is eat the kind of diet and live the kind of lifestyle that is conducive to actually helping your body to fight. Does that make sense to everyone? Fantastic, fantastic. Now, I didn't highlight this second part, but I want you to know what it said. It said, unfortunately, the overwhelming thrust of the literature published to date on COVID-19 and diabetes has emphasized medications as the linchpin of glycemic control. This focus is important, but too narrow in the face of the large body of research supporting nutrition. Okay, here we go. Thank you, sir. Now, notice what this says further. It says consuming, this is still a part of that same study. Consuming fresh fiber-rich whole foods could serve to mitigate some of the overwhelming immune response that appears to be compounded in patients with COVID-19 who have diabetes and obesity, and must be a central focus included in all clinical recommendations made to patients or healthcare systems during this pandemic. So we've been overemphasizing medication. They're looking for a vaccine right now. And you know what? Truthfully, I hope they find it. But we don't have to start waiting for a vaccine. We don't have to wait for a vaccine. The things that you and I can do right now is follow the principles, because we've got evidence. We've got science. They talk about science. Let the science lead. Let the science lead. Well, I'm telling you, the science is leading and has been leading a long time. And it's been pointing to one thing, that our lifestyle is not conducive to being healthy. But we can change that. In 5 days, how many days? Just 5 days, we can actually change our condition. We can change our outlook. We can get on this journey from sickness to health together. Oh, and by the way, there are some amazing plans right here, even beyond these 5 days. Even beyond these 5 days, there's a plan to really delve deeply week by week to show people how to not just come, listen, not to just come and hear someone speak for 5 days and say, I heard everything I needed to hear and now I'm going to go try this. No. What if we could get together week after week and really have a support group? If we could just have a group of us who got together and continue to study these things and support one another so that we have the kind of health. Because listen, friends, listen very carefully. This is not going away. They're talking about the second wave as it gets colder and all of the other factors. Not to mention the fact that there's just infighting. You don't know what the truth is today. You don't know who to believe. They say almost 60% of American people will not take this vaccine even when it comes, because we're not sure. But what we want to show you over the next 5 days, and then week to week for a period of time, going through these principles one by one, learning how to really strengthen your body, strengthen your whole outlook, give you more energy so that you can withstand the things that are coming. That sounds good to me. I tell you, I know that you'll benefit. You'll be blessed, and so will your family. And let me introduce you to the people that I'm talking about. Oh, I do want to mention something about this little graph right here. This shows that BMI, your body mass index, if you happen to be well over the 28 BMI, this is supposed to be standard, and the typical average American is over 29. If you happen to have a body mass index, the more, or put it this way, the greater your BMI, the greater your chances of succumbing to COVID-19. I'm so glad that there are a lot of people, and people that I know, people that I've met, places I've traveled, and I'm noticing that people are taking this so seriously. They're saying, this is the year. This is the year that I'm actually going to make the change. They start to work out. They're doing the things. They're exercising. They're following the principles. And I would encourage you, friends, this is the year. This would be the year to time to really take this seriously. Let me introduce you to the people who have made this a part of their lifestyle. Now, how many of you have heard of the blue zones? The blue zones. Some of you have heard of the blue zones. Well, there are 5 of them. How many? I keep going with that number 5, don't I? 5 blue zones in the world. There are 5 blue zones in the world. Now, there's one in Okinawa, Japan. That's a blue zone. By the way, what is a blue zone? Let me explain that before I go any further. Blue zone is a geographic location. It is a demographic that's confirmed to live 100 years or more, or having the longest lifestyle, or having longevity that's greater than the rest of the general population. As I mentioned, they're living to be 80, 90, 100, and they're doing things that are not typical of a 90-year-old or an 80-year-old or 100, certainly not a 100-year-old person. They don't have walkers, they don't have canes. They're still exercising, they belong to gyms, they still have their driver's license, and they're driving safely. They're dating still, successfully, whatever that means. But they're living to be 100 years old, and they're living and they have the best quality of life, still, even at 100. As I mentioned, Okinawa, Japan, longest living women in the world, on the planet. Sardinia, Italy, longest living men up in the highlands, right? Ikaria, Greece. Then there's the Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica. Again, they've identified these. These are a sure thing, these 5 zones. And then there is Loma Linda, California. Loma Linda, California. Anybody? Just your neighbors to the south, right? They have the longest living people who are both men and women, black and white, Latino, Asian. It doesn't matter. What's different about them? See, let me just make this point very clearly. In Okinawa, Japan, longest living women, but it's just specifically the women who are living the longest, sort of like here in the U.S. And you go to Italy, Sardinia, and it's the longest living men, right? They live longer than the women there. But what is it about this group in Loma Linda, California, who are men and women, black and white? So in other words, it doesn't really matter the gender, doesn't really matter the ethnicity. It's something that they're doing. Now, they did find some commonalities across all 5 of these blue zones, right? There were some commonalities that they saw. They saw that they do eat a diet that is a healthier diet. It is high in fiber-rich foods, right? They exercise not necessarily because they belong to a gym, but because they just do things that are active. Naturally, they hike, they do things, like they say in Italy, they do a lot of kneading of bread, right? And this is sort of like a natural, organic way of exercising, right? So it's not so much that they have a gym membership, they just do things that nudge them along the way to exercise a little more. They see that there's a principle there, there's a law there, and they follow it, right? They find that they belong to good groups, social groups, groups that basically are interested in health. They find that if you have a few friends who are healthy, guess what? You're probably going to be healthy too, right? So they do these things. They drink their water, you know? Some of them drink more things than that. Like in Italy, they drink a lot of wine. And they've identified that that's something that's healthy, but when you really break down the science, they just are drinking resveratrol, which is an antioxidant that is found in the wine, but you can get it in grape juice. I prefer it personally in grape juice, right? So, all right, so let's look a little further at this group. Now, this gentleman you see on the screen here, he's Dan Buettner. He didn't necessarily coin the phrase Blue Zone, but he certainly did make it popular. He's written books about it, and basically, I believe he just sold his whole concept of going around and turning cities into blue zones, nudging people to eat better, to drink more water and exercise more, just like these other 5, right? But he is an author, an anthropologist, a journalist, and he goes around, for the last few years, he's been talking about these groups. And what he saw with this group down in California was that they actually are doing things a lot better than the rest of the people in this country simply because they follow the principles. Can we turn it up a little bit?
World-renowned explorer and longevity expert Dan Buettner has traveled around the world in search of places where people actually live longer and live better.
Revealing the secrets of the
There
blue
you go.
zone to places on our planet where people live longer
Can
and
you hear
healthier
it?
lives.
Can you hear it out there?
Now,
Online,
here's the
can you
tip.
hear
If
it?
you really want a long and healthy life, it may help to live in a blue zone. That's the term given by the National Geographic fellow Dan Buettner to certain parts of the world where people are most likely to live to 100 years old or more. First of all, what is a blue zone exactly?
It's a demographically confirmed, geographically defined area where people are living the longest. And we found 5 of them. We found one in Okinawa, Japan, longest lived women on the planet. Longest lived men live up in the highlands of Sardinia. Nicoya Peninsula of Costa Rica. Ikaria, Greece. And then the longest lived Americans, right off the San Bernardino Freeway near Los Angeles, the Seventh-day Adventists. And they're living about 10 years longer than their North American counterparts. What my team tried to do was look at the environmental components that nudge them all day into eating a little bit better, moving a little bit more. And the big points, socializing more and having a strong sense of purpose. It turns out that that conveys more longevity than any pill you could take.
So it's not just about, I remember there was one community that seemed they all ate yogurt, and everybody was like, well, that's why they live to 100. It's not one thing.
No.
Right?
It's not a silver bullet, it's silver buckshot.
All right, you see that? So, Loma Linda, California, longest living Americans. They do the things that I've been describing here, the lifestyle things. And the thing that I find so fascinating is the correlation between the things that strengthen us against the COVID-19 happens to be the things that they've been doing for years. And you're not finding, let me say it this way. I think it was here in Washington State. There was a assisted living facility. I think they had 130 residents. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? 130 residents. This was when we knew that we were in trouble. This was this year, 130 residents, and of course they were elderly, and the whole place just came down with coronavirus. Many of the staff came down with it, but of the 130 of the residents, 101 of them came down with coronavirus. And I believe it was in the high 70s, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, who actually died. Could have been more. But that's when we knew. Now, what do you think was taking place there? Probably not the best hygiene. Probably a lot of comorbidity. A lot of medications, right? What's different about that life or that assisted living facility and say a population of people who are in the same space often and even during the same exact time, and yet they had none of the same issues? It was the principles that I'm putting before you. Here's the thing, and even if you should come down with this deadly virus, the very thing that I'm describing can get you out of it. But also that same thing can help you avoid it the next time it comes around again. This is worth our attention. It is worth our attention. It's worth our attention right now. This is not just a typical health lecture. I hope you realize that. The things that we are sharing over the next 5 days are life and death for a lot of people. And we need to make decisions, not tomorrow, but today. Today we need to make decisions. Let me give you a few more points, and then we'll look forward to tomorrow. Here's what I'm going to guarantee you tomorrow. I'm going to have my own clicker.
Buettner has traveled around the world in search of places
If you
where
could just
people
advance
actually
that
live
one.
longer and live better.
Revealing the secrets of the blue
Edgar,
zone,
do you mind?
places on our planet where people
you
live
advance
longer
that?
and
One more time. Advance it, please. I've already shown that video. If you could advance it.
Has traveled around.
Thanks, Edgar. Appreciate it. And if you could just get past that one.
Well, you don't have
Get
to go
past
all
that
the way
one.
to
Just advance it
Sardinia
one more time.
or
One more
Japan.
time.
Well, you don't have to go all the way to Sardinia.
Advance it to the next slide.
Well,
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Appreciate it, Edgar. Okay, here's some final thoughts that I want to give to you this evening. And this is very important. It's often said that genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. Now listen very carefully. Closing thoughts for you, closing thoughts. Because a lot of times people believe, and I've heard it many times, people believe, listen to me very carefully. For those who are watching online, listen very, very carefully. Forget about what just happened with the technology, because you need to hear this. Many people believe because my grandmother had diabetes, I've got diabetes. Because my father had heart disease, well, I've got heart disease. It's hereditary. Well, we should look at the history. That's necessary. But the science has proven 75% of the lifestyle diseases that we come down with are based on our own choice. Only a 25% of the things that we have, that we suffer from, are according to heredity. So that means that 75% of the things that we do are the things that we chose, or we opened up the door and invited into our life. This is very important for us to understand. And I love this next slide right here, the one you're looking at right now. I love it because if you look at it very carefully, you see that saying is true. Genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. This is the area of what they call epigenetics, how the genes will express themselves based on what you do, what you eat, how you live. And you see in this picture, the man is putting, looks like some sauces and some cheese and some things, and I'm going to talk about that. He's putting those things into his mouth, but you see in the shadow is really he's loading a gun. We'll talk so much more about that. But here's some good news. Here's the good news. In closing, this gentleman, he wrote a book. Have you ever heard of Dean Ornish? I'm going to talk more about him. Dean Ornish, he's the one who helped President Clinton reverse his heart disease. And he wrote a book about reversing heart disease because most people, listen, most people don't know that you can actually reverse heart disease. Oh yeah, you can reverse it. It is reversible. And the case with Bill Clinton is a perfect example of that. So he wrote this book about reversing heart disease. But he also wrote another book called Undo It. That's his most recent book. And he's talking about prostate issue. He's talking about heart disease. He's talking about many of the lifestyle diseases that many of us come down with, or in the era of coronavirus, comorbidities or pre-existing conditions. You can reverse those issues and you can protect yourself from what's coming. So he wrote a book about it. So notice he gave four things that people should do to reverse things. Eat well, do you remember that? Do you remember from the Harvard study, right? How eating healthy was number one? He looked at the same thing, came away with the same result based on the same science. Move more. That sounds like exercise, doesn't it? Exactly. Stress less. Now that's the thing that we have up here on ours. Trust more, stress less. We're coming to the same conclusions because it's the principles. So science is now backing up the very things that a lot of people have been living for the longest time. We're just saying, wow, these things actually work. Yeah? But I like what he says in number 4. He says, love more. Love more. And let me put that into perspective in what I'm talking about. See, the thing that works for the people that I've been sharing with you about, whether they're in Okinawa, Japan, whether they're in Sardinia, Italy, whether they're in Loma Linda, California, they have a lifestyle, and they love that lifestyle. And that lifestyle loves them. What I want you all to do over the next 4 more days is I want you to choose. First of all, I want you to listen and hear about a lifestyle that maybe you didn't really know about. Maybe you didn't know that these things were laws. Maybe you didn't know that there was a law of temperance. And law of temperance says not only should you not eat too much, but there's a certain time you should eat. Science brings that out now, right? And we want to talk about all these things and bring them all together in one beautiful package. And we want you to see that these laws are not things that you go, oh man, more rules and more diets. No. We're not talking about a diet. We're talking about a lifestyle. And it's a lifestyle that loves you, and it just wants you to love it back. Boy, that's the sound of the end of my presentation right there. Friends, tomorrow we're going to pick up with when hearts attack. And we're going to really get into this idea of the heart. Now, here's the thing. I'll leave you with this thought. Are you listening? Are you listening? One of the things that they're finding, listen to this very carefully. The thing that they're finding, and you're not hearing about it as much as you should, is that when someone does come down with COVID-19, coronavirus, and they recover, what they're finding is that there are lasting and permanent neurological and cardiovascular issues. It so affects your body that there are permanent things that take place that you will never, ever be able to overcome. We want to avoid this, don't we? We don't want to come down with it in the first place. So I want you to come back tomorrow, 7 o'clock. For those of you who have joined us live streaming, 7 o'clock, we'll start right on time. And we want you to either be where you are right now or in one of these seats. There's plenty of seats for you. And again, if you joined us late and you miss what our host Mark Witzel mentioned and what I then confirmed, is that we have plenty of the precautions taken here to make sure that you're safe. People are socially distant. They're wearing masks, and we even have air filters throughout the space. And let me just tell you, there's some lovely people here, and they want to see you, and we want to see you. So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I'm going to bring back Mark, our host, and he's got some things that he's going to give away in closing. May God bless you, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.